Welcome to the Blend Podcast.
Welcome to the Blend Podcast. Nice to have you with us. Today we speak to Rachel Weiss. A really interesting conversation, which I think we'll all resonate with. Once again, apologies for the sound quality. We are recording live in the cafe. There is a lot of background noise. We will try work it out, but I think it gives us an authentic feel of a real conversation in the cafe. Gather around the campfire. Welcome, Rachel, to this Blend Podcast. Thank you for taking the time to be with us.
Thank you.
And this is something that's been on our minds for a while, about how we can share stories and get to know people. And you were one of the names that came up in early days, like, oh yeah, you've got an interesting backstory, and I'm sure, so I don't want this to be an interview as such, and just a conversation
around the campfire.
Around the campfire, yeah. I've been starting with, how do you like your coffee?
Well, my favorite is a mocha, but that's a special treat. I have to have a reason for the mocha. Otherwise, it's a straightforward cappuccino.
It's a straight cappuccino. Yeah, no, that's right. We, as saying earlier, that we feed different addictions at different different treats.
Yeah.
So you've been coming to Blend for a few years now. I mean, probably near the beginning.
When did you start?
2013 we opened. So yeah. So tell me a little bit about yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
Who am I? Well, I live in Perth, so I guess that's pertinent to Blend. I've been here about 20 years. Moved here for my husband's job, and now we're staying because of mine and because we like it. So I was nervous of moving to Perth because I'm a city girl. I grew up in London. I've lived in Berlin, Oxford, Edinburgh. So to come to Perth was a challenge for me because I'm a bit paranoid or nervous about living somewhere small, because will I fit in and I look different and all of that. So I'm delighted to say that has not been a problem here. And a few years ago, the people of Perth turned out for Perth Against Racism.
Oh, yeah.
There was a few people protesting about a mosque being built.
Yeah, that's right.
I found that immensely heartening, Sandy, to see the sheer numbers. Because Perth is not the most activist place.
Yeah, it does surprise you,
Yeah.
And it's I found, having been open, Perth is made up of a lot of people who've come to it as well over time. Whether it was Aviva, or GA years ago, and so it's quite more. It's a bit more eclectic than you expect it to be. There's a traditional Perth.
Yes.
Of that will always remain, and then there's the sort of nomadic Perth.
And I find wherever I've lived that nomads attract each other. They're the ones who are open to friends. Yeah. So most of my friends are incomers.
Right. Yeah,
naturally.
that's interesting.
Because the people who have lived here all their lives, I'm generalizing hugely, will have all their family, all their school friends. There aren't many vacancies. Yeah. Whereas the other ones who are new, I think we just...
Yeah, no, it's true. Yeah, we've got our receptors open. Yeah, no.
Exactly.
So what do you do? What do you do in Perth now?
So I run Rowan Consultancy. Okay. So Rowan is a counselling and coaching agency. We do all that invisible stuff, helping people lead more satisfying lives. That's what we want to do.
And why do they need that?
Because it's often hard to lead a more satisfying life on your own. I think we can go down rabbit holes, and it's useful to talk to someone else, like a counsellor or a coach or a good friend or an elder. Do you know that? I think traditionally, time immemorial, particularly young people, and in that I include us middle-aged folk, we benefit from talking to somebody wiser.
Yeah.
The wise person doesn't necessarily tell us what to do, but they somehow reflect back our thoughts, and from their wisdom and experience can maybe pick out what are the major points we're saying or what are our options. So it's that kind of conversation, and because people are more nomadic now, perhaps because of that, perhaps because they don't have church elders, they don't I imagine people used to go and talk to the wise woman in the village or the priest or whoever. There's less of that around.
I think it was also that we did live in villages, so it wasn't even about specifically one person. It was about the collective knowledge that and when I look back at my life, there's been uncles and aunts that I could speak to, or
That's
even
it.
best friends or teachers even that showed me things that my parents maybe never knew or couldn't have reached out to me. And I think that was one of the reasons we created Blend. Actually, I mean that's it came out of these conversations of saying, where is that place, where is those safe spaces in our communities again? That in the old days, the pub was the warmest room in the village, and we were used to that space to be a traveling space and people to come in and anyone could come in. There was a known.
I think that there's Daniel Olderberg, I think, talks about the third space.
Third space,
and I think that's what you've created here.
Yeah.
A space where the stranger can walk in, but also where there's community, where you can strike up a conversation with the person at the next table, where I might come in here, I often do, and spot a neighbour or somebody who runs a shop I go to, and so we kind of recognise each other, but maybe have never had a conversation.
Yeah.
And being here gives, people who I wouldn't know well enough to invite into my own home, but because we're both in Blend, it gives permission to chat.
It's why we actually designed this as a living room. In early days when we were the whole Chesterfield look and all that, it was all about what was the communal living room, and how would you, because it was that, because you wouldn't invite. We live in such segregated lives, and we can corral ourselves behind
easily.
electronics and whatever, and so actually it is very difficult to create a space ourselves unless you have this third space. And now
where you can gather, you can say to someone, let's meet there.
Yeah, it's safe enough for both of us, and that sort of balance of privacy and socialness.
It's public and private.
Yeah.
And I really like the way you've designed it, that it's almost like different rooms or different areas. You've got the higher tables and chairs.
Yeah.
But having the sofas that are lower, and then having the stairs up at the back, so it's almost like nooks and crannies.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm glad you noticed that, because that literally was intentional. Talk about what moods people come in. Sometimes
or by the fire, there's two chairs.
And whether you're functional, you're working, so then you go sit, in a workspace. And actually, I think that's one of the things that a lot of places get wrong in the way they design it, because they design, even high-end places end up almost becoming cafeterias. It's one type of design monotonously put through, and there's nothing that sort of the nooks and crannies.
No, you wouldn't say to someone, "Where's your favourite chair?"
Yeah.
Whereas here, absolutely, I think anyone who comes to Blend knows where their favourite
where they're going to
yes.
sit. We actually know what mood they're in by knowing what chair they sit, because sometimes they're just
they want to be
functional.
alone, or they want to be open. Yes, do I hide up there, or am I at the front door to say hi to everyone?
So, I mean, I was reading there was an article in Small City, Big Personality, and it was really, really engaging article talking about, it talked about your journey. I mean, you've been to different places. Do you want to talk a bit about that, like from London?
Yeah, you might
Perth,
need to prompt me a bit on which bits are interesting. So I was born and bred in London. My parents were both kind of immigrant refugee background. Dad's German Jewish, so they fled in the 30s and were welcomed by Britain. And Mum came from Singapore, parents from India. So London was a good place because it's such a melting pot. Yeah. Everyone looked different, so we didn't stand out. So I'm really grateful I grew up in that environment, where there was just diversity everywhere. In that respect, there was less diversity perhaps at that time in terms of sexuality or other things. We had 2 years in the States as well because of Dad's job, and then we came back.
Okay.
Plymouth. That was my first job. It was very scary. I left school at 18 and became a computer programmer, and just didn't know what I was doing.
Because actually that was so fascinating. You won.
Oh yes.
You won the first, was it Shell Prize for?
Shell sponsored kids, so 18-year-olds. They would award, I think, 5 scholarships a year for school kids to go and work as programmers. programming was new then, you know, you
Yeah,
didn't
yeah.
study at uni. And I was the first girl to get it. It had all been boys till then.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was
in
quite pleased.
AI, or you?
That was later on.
Okay.
That's what brought me to Scotland, was I
Yeah.
came to Edinburgh to study artificial intelligence. But at that stage, yeah, I was working in programming with a whole load of geeks and nerds who knew a lot more than me, because they would stay up late at night programming, whereas I was not quite so single-minded. I had other interests
You had
too,
you had a
but
life,
that made
yeah.
me less good at it.
Yeah.
I was good enough, but I wasn't, you know, right up there where they were breathing, eating, sleeping, programming. So that was just for a year. The scholarship was for a year, and then I went to university, did mathematics, because it's beautiful. I know lots of people
There's a
hate
truth.
it.
There's a truth.
There's truth, there's right and wrong. It's very simple. Maybe that appeals to me. It's black and white. You know,
Yeah.
it's not a matter of opinion.
Yeah.
If you've solved that equation, you know you've got it right. Whereas when I've written an essay,
Yeah.
could always improve
Subjective.
the subject. But it's like, no, I got it. X equals 3. End of.
It's 1 + 1 is the same anywhere in the universe. You know.
Well, we could debate that. 'Cause
Really?
Yes, Bertrand Russell did write quite a whole book on proving whether 1 + 1 is 2 or not, depending on your rules. But yeah, there's a certain beauty to pure mathematics and geometry and algebra that I enjoyed spending 3 happy years.
Yeah, and that takes
Exploring.
you to Aberdeen at some point.
Yeah, not yet. We're still, where'd we got to? We got to Oxford, London, Plymouth, Oxford, Berlin next.
Okay.
So I didn't know what I wanted to do. I really didn't until about 20 years ago. So I had a year off and went and did some voluntary work with the Jesuits in Germany. And because Dad's family came from Germany, I was quite keen to go and live, particularly in Berlin, which is where they'd been. And I think Berlin's, at that point, the wall was still up. So it was a really interesting place to go and live, with the wall down the middle of it, and just to improve my German, because I wanted to learn
It's
that.
such an alien world. I was trying to describe that recently, the wall and East and West Berlin and Checkpoint Charlie and all that. And it just seems alien to most people now, but it really
If you
was.
describe it, they will go, you are mad.
Yeah,
How could you draw a wall in the middle of a street, in the middle, with people being shot if they tried?
Yeah, trying to escape, you know, and just lives, you know, families torn apart and separated, and oh wow.
It actually gives me hope, because at that age, what was I, still in my 20s, things like the wall was up, South Africa apartheid, Northern Ireland, all the horrors and troubles there. These seemed insoluble problems that humans had created and humans were perpetuating that would never end, and all 3 of those.
Yeah.
I mean, I know we've come up with new problems, but the fact that Northern Ireland...
So there's hope.
There's hope, exactly. South Africa, okay, all of them could be better, Germany. But there's hope, things that seem hopeless. Yeah, don't give up. After Berlin, that's when I came to Edinburgh. That was my first time in Scotland, because Edinburgh was the place for artificial intelligence then. And that's when I met my husband, Andy. He was also studying there, doing a similar but different course. So, and then, again, I didn't know what to do after that master's, so I had another year off, did some work, voluntary work with an AIDS charity. AIDS was a thing.
Oh, yeah, okay.
So this is the late 80s, early 90s. I remember my father saying, when I said I'm going to Edinburgh, he said, you need to know about AIDS then, because Edinburgh was one of the hot spots before it spread. And that was also a terrifying time, because people were dying, there was no cure. It was like COVID, but worse, because it was spreading so much in certain populations. I don't mean to dismiss the suffering of people with COVID, but if you were living in those communities then, it's like all your friends could die and you could catch it.
And it was that unknown, and it was something was moving between communities, and it was dividing people as well.
It was a bit
being
like
used to
it's
leverage.
happening in some of the English communities. Certain communities get blamed.
Yeah, it's their fault, and they've voted in, and it's not.
Human nature,
Human
sad, isn't it? It's happening now with different groups. So, so I did some voluntary work on that and learned masses. And worked at the uni part-time to fund voluntary work. Then I got made redundant from the university, another example of adversity leading to, opportunity. So I decided to go and train as a school teacher, sort of 2 weeks after term had started. So I just went wherever they had a place, and someone dropped out in Aberdeen. So I moved at 2 days' notice from Edinburgh, leaving boyfriend behind, and he'd gone home for the weekend. I remember saying, by the way, when you come back on Monday,
I'm away.
I've moved to Aberdeen, nothing personal. It's only a 1-year course. They offered me a place. So that's how and Aberdeen's the furthest north. My teaching practice was in Peterhead,
Right.
where I had to write down a crib sheet to understand
Yeah.
the language.
Gosh.
So that's the furthest north I've lived, was 1 term in Peterhead and the year in Aberdeen.
I remember coming to, I mean, Dundee was where I came to study architecture, and you know, I thought I understood English, and you
Yes.
know, that was a culture shock in itself. You know, that
Is.
yeah, what you think you understand about a place, and
We've had some students who come, international students come to Perth College to learn English, and they've lodged with us.
okay,
If anyone listening wants to have international students staying with them, maybe not at the moment, but eventually Perth College are always looking for hosts,
okay, that's good.
which has broadened our outlook on the world, but also they say that too. They think they understand English, and then they're met.
The culture of English, you know, of
But
where
the
in each
language specifically, people who aren't used to talking to people from abroad don't always know how to enunciate to change their language to make it understandable.
I still love the fact when you go to Inverness, there's a lot of Hindi words in Inverness. And I think it came back with the army, so they'll say teak hair and things like that, and you're like, where I'm in
And they
Inverness
don't know
here.
where
You know, they don't know where
it's
it's come
just-
from, and it's just come in, and they use the Queen's English and bits of Hindi in there, and you're like,
Wow,
this
I
is
didn't know that.
this is curious. You know?
Yeah.
And then so Aberdeen,
Aberdeen.
you come,
Then back to Edinburgh. So
Yeah.
for my first teaching job, I wanted to work in Edinburgh
Okay.
because boyfriend mainly.
Yeah.
So I just applied for a job and got one in an Edinburgh school and came back. And then I settled down a bit more. I think we were there,
Reached
got
point.
married, had the first baby. We're fortunate we could have children and stayed there. I can't count, maybe about 5 years.
yeah.
In Portobello by the seaside,
But-
which was
well,
lovely.
Which is nice, you know.
Yeah.
I want to. I mean, there was obviously illness in there. I found out.
yes.
Yeah.
Aha. How
you
did I
wanna talk
forget
about
that?
it a bit? Yeah.
Just as well
It's
you know my
lost, it's a
life
trauma.
and you've read up on small city personnel. Yes, well that was my coping mechanism, was to compartmentalize
Yeah.
it. And so yeah, just after we got married, 3 months after we got married, Andy got just rushed into hospital, vomiting blood. You know, anyone who's gone through something like
Wow.
that, it's very scary.
Wow.
So, and they didn't know what was wrong with him. So they put him in the infectious diseases hospital, and then I went to visit him by bus after work and found out he'd been moved to another hospital. Because no mobile phones, how did we manage?
Yeah.
So I would travel for an hour on the bus to visit him to only discover that he was in another hospital on the other side of town because they'd decided it was something else. So it was a very difficult time for us. And first year of teaching is quite stressful anyway, I think, for most teachers. It certainly was for me. But bizarrely, I didn't tell my head teacher that this had happened during the night when he came to observe my lesson. So I was clearly in be strong and coping mode. You know, why didn't I just say so? I mean, I did the next day. But so we had quite a rough year. He was in hospital until about June. From October, they did find out what was wrong. They figured out the medication, but he was institutionalized.
And you were a mother at that time?
No, not yet.
Yeah.
We'd only just got married, so no baby yet, thank goodness. That happened later on, that we had babies and illness. But at that point, I just had to think about me, my job, and him.
Yeah.
I honestly don't know if I would have managed if I'd had children as well. I would have managed, but
You
I would have
would
had to
have.
drop something. I
Yeah.
think the job would have had to go at that point. So luckily they knew what it was, and it was something they could stop. It was his liver. It was some congenital disease. They could stop it getting worse. And he eventually stabilized and was let out of hospital. Completely institutionalized, because he'd been in hospital for months.
Wow.
And if anyone's been in a hospital for a bit, you kind of come out, you're like he couldn't switch the dishwasher on. I'd go to work and say, could you just run the wash? You know, basically push the button. He's like, what? No. It's like, no, come on, you're not in hospital anymore. I am not your nurse. You can do this. So that was a big readjustment for us. Yeah.
To have him back as well, I suppose. You know,
Well, we
when
were just really
got
lucky.
used to-
He could have died.
Really?
And then we had to learn to live with it. And we knew that at some point he would get worse and need another transplant.
one of the themes we're trying to explore in these podcasts is this whole idea of change. You know, that the world, the journey we try to set ourselves on is rarely the journey we end up, working at. So it's like, what is that? I mean, how do you cope with these? How have you found you've coped with these changes, these adjustments?
The changes that I choose are fine. So I'm guessing that you're talking about these changes that we don't choose, that happen to us, like he got ill, or I got made redundant, or whatever else happens. So yeah, I cope by coping. I go into be strong mode. I'm now much better at asking for help from friends, but initially, as shown by not telling my head teacher, I thought I had to cope on my own. So that is something I've learned. But
where does that come, that stoicism type of thing?
Possibly from my parents, who had to be quite self-reliant because they were children of the war, where their parents couldn't always. They did their best, absolutely, but you had to get on with it. That stiff upper lip thing. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Maybe being an overly responsible eldest child, you could come up with all sorts of things.
Yeah. But I suppose it's understanding that about ourselves, that we have an instinctive go-to sort of thing that we tend to do, and some
which
of it
has been useful in our childhood. We developed coping strategies that were useful, but as adults we have choices, and that's part of what I love doing in counselling and coaching, is help people become aware. What is your coping strategy? Okay. And is it still useful? Would you like to develop some alternatives rather than just unthinkingly going to that? So my unthinking go-to is cope, be strong, don't ask for help. But thank goodness, I have now learned that there are other strategies and I can choose the one I want.
What do you think people are struggling with? Like, what is it that you feel most people
I think most people until COVID, had the illusion of control over their lives and were therefore profoundly shocked when something happened. So one blessing for Andy and me of being shocked by him being ill and possibly dying in our 20s was, we know you can't take life for granted and we could all die tomorrow, so make the most of it today. But I think most people live with the illusion that they will never die and nothing bad will ever happen to them, and that bad things only happen to bad people, and it's unfair, and that can make you very bitter.
There's a I call it the Disney effect that we sort of live by, the sort of happily ever after, and that everything has this, there's almost an expectation that is what we want out of life. Whereas
actually that doesn't make us grow. And there's this false pursuit of happiness, I think, rather than a pursuit of growth and wisdom, which comes through suffering. I think suffering is part of life, joy is part of life. If we could only accept that suffering is part of life, we suffer, then we need support, and that's how we grow. Yeah. I'm not saying I've enjoyed any of my suffering. I absolutely wish he hadn't got ill and I hadn't gone through that and other things. But I can see how that enriched my capacity to enjoy life and to appreciate it. So back to your question, people struggle with change, or other people may struggle with change because they had too much chaos in their lives when they were children and they crave security. So any change, even if it could be seen as a positive change, is inherently fearful to them, because when they grew up, any change was possible danger. So they're hardwired to interpret change as danger rather than opportunity.
As a negative,
and again, taking time to discover that through counselling or whatever other means can help.
What helps? Like, what do you... I'm sort of thinking about the listener of this, people are too scared to come to a counsellor, and we found that as this show, we end up becoming counsellors to a lot of people. We're the stranger on the bus.
You are, and hairdressers do, and baristas. They can
just
talk to you.
Weird safe space that people find to share things that I think they don't tell anyone. And actually, one of the things we've discovered as a business is there is so much latent unresolved grief on one level,
and trauma.
And trauma is the other one. We just see people who've never dealt with a divorce or a grandparent dying or even a dog dying, when they were...
Or abuse, whether it's physical or emotional or sexual, or that people, the way to cope initially is survival mode. Let's just lock it off, not think about it, because it's unbearable. Otherwise it wouldn't be trauma. If something unbearable happened to us, our way to cope is to lock it off.
So what is trauma? Like from your point of view, how would you define
Trauma
trauma?
is something that is still affecting us now. So a particular event might be traumatic for me and not for you. So it's very hard to define an event, even though I mentioned types of abuse, because it's traumatic if it is locked away and still affecting our capacity to enjoy life. So for somebody, being sent to boarding school is traumatic.
Yeah.
For somebody else, it's wonderful. And you know, sexual abuse, I think, is always traumatic.
Yeah. But
yeah.
I think one of the issues is we associate trauma with almost like the extremes, like sexual abuse or something major. But actually, what I've realized is, like, I went to boarding school and I enjoyed it. I loved it, and it was great. You know, but some of my classmates I still talk to, they have huge amounts of pain and unresolved things that sit there. So and the weird thing is, part of it is this guilt that it wasn't a big thing. It wasn't like someone was caning them or
Doesn't
something.
matter.
But, you know,
That's what I mean. It's the impact on the person.
It's the impact. Yeah,
like it
the
could
scar.
just be neglect, not physical neglect, but some parents provide very well physically and food on the table and everything, but for whatever reason, those parents aren't able to give, to express their love. I believe they do love their children, but if they can't show it, then that child has been neglected and hasn't been given the gift of knowing that they are lovable and wonderful. And that will affect them. The good news is you can overcome these things.
Yeah. So what
So
is
let's
that
not be
good
too
news?
gloomy.
That's exactly. So what is that good news? Like what should people know that's out
Okay,
there?
to be scientific, the good news is that our brains are plastic, which doesn't mean they're made of plastic, but
It can be rewired.
But they can be rewired, exactly. So maybe the trauma set us in a particular way that we're always startled when a dog goes past because we were little and a dog scared us, or we're always startled by men or women or change. But yeah, we can rewire our own brains, generally through relationship, which kind of comes back to community and campfire, by realizing there's nothing wrong with us. So a key question, people will go, what's wrong with me? Or someone will go, what's wrong with you? And it's not what's wrong with you. The question is, what happened to you? If someone is behaving strangely, something happened and that made them adapt their behavior. So the good news is that we can change.
Good.
And through relationship, whether it's with God, with a human, with a dog, not at least symmetrical.
No, it is.
That word. If we can be brave enough to open ourselves up and be vulnerable and go, I hurt, I need help.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do, so I don't want to make it sound easy, but it is very possible.
I think it's wonderful to say that, because one of the things we've found is just to remind people that they're not alone.
Yes.
You know, so some of these conversations are able, just telling people, like, yes, there are others who
Like
feel
you.
this. You know, and
This is a normal reaction.
Like finance, for example, people working with debt. You know, you don't assume debt as trauma, but it's sitting there in people.
It can be a very shaming thing.
Exactly.
Anything that makes you feel shame.
And you're sort of saying, well, actually, and the great thing is, you know, we've got so many customers here. You're like, well, just go speak to that person, their bank manager, or
Yes.
or you know, that
And
person
that's
deals
that
with
community and connection.
Yeah.
So that reminds me that I'm not alone is important to know, and there's nothing wrong with me inherently that I feel like this, that there's a normal response to an abnormal situation. And that's one of the things people say about Menopause Cafe and Death Cafe, both of which are pop-up events we hold in Blend.
Yeah.
After Menopause Cafe, someone said, now I know I'm not alone. And the other key one was, now I know I'm not mad. And we each need to know that, that we're not alone, or we're not mad, or we're no more mad than anyone else, and we're no more alone than anyone, because basically we are all alone. So those two things seem to bring immense comfort. You know, we can't fix someone's grief or menopause symptoms, but we can let them know they're not alone, and they're not crazy to be feeling the way they feel.
I love both those ideas. Like, I think when you first approach us about that, my immediate reaction is like, yes, you know, like Death Cafe and Menopause Cafe, like they just sound so like, I don't know, oxymorons. I don't know. I don't even know.
The words don't go together. Yeah.
You know, and yet you realize, you know, these are the sort of things that these third spaces are needed for.
They're perfect.
To allow people, like we found some counselors using this space because, you know, a successful business person doesn't want to see their BMW parked at Murray Royal at the
Yes.
psychiatrist, because
There's
they don't
still
want
stigma
anyone
and
to
shame.
know. Whereas they may come to a coffee shop and have an early discussion. So what is Menopause Cafe? What is Death Cafe?
I'll start with Death Cafe because
yeah.
it came first. So a guy called John Underwood had the idea in London, I think about 8 years ago. And John realized we needed spaces to talk about death, not bereavement support groups. I mean, we do need those too, but that's different.
Like not a post.
No, just for any of
active,
us.
yeah.
It could be post, it could be pre. So he and his mother, Sue Barksey Reed, who was a therapist, started hosting them in their own homes. Just pop-up events. Come along if you want to talk about death. End of. No agenda, no timetable, no speakers, no experts, no expectations. Just come and have conversations. And that model is like a social franchise. So I read about it in The Guardian. There was a Death Cafe in Edinburgh. I thought that would be great. Wonder if there's one in Perth. I'd like to go. There wasn't, so what do?
Make it happen.
Do it. So I contacted John. I said, I'd like to run one. He said, fine, here are the guidelines.
Fair.
On you go. And that's how Death Cafe has spread worldwide. Because anyone who signs up to the principles, there's no money involved, can run one. So in terms of what it was, we looked at different cafes in Perth, and we chose Blend because of that sense of community and acceptance, that everyone is welcome. You don't have to, pardon me, but you do not have to look beautiful to come here, or polished or at your best.
We're all beautiful.
Yeah.
In different
You
ways.
welcome us as we are. So the principles are that it's open to everybody, pop-up event, respect everyone's difference of opinion, so we're not
So what
here.
happens at it?
People turn up, they sit at different tables in Blend. We say, welcome, here are the ground rules. Don't try and convince anyone of any belief or anything else that you have.
Yeah.
Why don't you start by introducing yourself to the other people on the table and say why you came here? And that's enough to get the conversation going. I would love it, here's what we did at the beginning, if people just, whenever they found the conversation wasn't either of interest to them and they weren't contributing anything, if they would get up and move to a different table.
Yeah.
But I've discovered that most people don't have the courage to do that. They feel rude.
We need to find a means somewhere.
So in the feedback forms, and that's why the feedback forms
Yeah.
are so useful, people said, could you not just ring a bell every 20 minutes and tell us to move? So that's what we do.
Speed dating with
Yeah,
death.
very much. So I like that. So every 20 minutes we ring a bell and say, please, half of you get up from each table and go and sit at another one and start the conversation again. So that is pretty much it. People talk about, their bucket list, what music they want at their funeral. They may talk about an actual bereavement.
Yeah.
Sometimes they talk about what they believe happens after they die, which could be nothing. Or I find them fascinating conversations.
I'm just fascinated that people responded. Like even the first one, you just because death tends to be such a taboo.
That's
sort of
why
space.
you need a Death Cafe,
Yeah.
and similarly Menopause Cafe.
Yeah.
I think any taboo subject, if it wasn't taboo, they wouldn't need a Death Cafe. They'd just be talking about it with their friends and family. An old lady came in and she said, and why are you here? So I started, and I remember she said, because my children, who were, probably in their 50s or 60s, will not let me talk about dying. They just go, no, because they can't bear to hear their mother talk about dying. But she really wanted to talk through, what should I do about my will? How should I write, what is this probate? So she came because her kids couldn't bear, understandably, to hear her talk about it.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
great.
that freedom, because if you talk about death to somebody at the bus stop or the barista, you don't know if they're going to be okay with that or freak out.
Yeah.
Whereas if you turn up to a Death Cafe, the one thing you know is
You know
that
that's
everyone in that room is absolutely fine for you to talk about death.
Yeah. Have you got other topics, other types of cafes you think are taboo should be talked about?
Miscarriage,
Miscarriage,
infertility,
yeah,
I think
okay.
those are possibly the next taboo.
Yeah.
People just don't understand that making senseless comments like, oh, you've got one kid, isn't it time you had a second one? Like, you don't know, they might be desperate for a second kid and can't have one. Or if people don't have children, it's kind of been semi-traditional or acceptable to tease people and hint or even say that they should be having kids. Like, first of all, they may not want kids, and that should be okay. And secondly, they may be desperate for kids. And going through IVF or thinking about adoption. So I think people are very insensitive without meaning to be.
Yeah.
And if we talked about it more, like, okay, it's been about 20 years since I had kids, but in those days, many women didn't even announce they were pregnant until 12 weeks in.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
In case the baby died, and they couldn't face telling people. Now, how sad is that?
Yeah.
Whereas if we all knew how common miscarriage is, then we might be more... people would know they're not alone when it happened. They wouldn't be shocked and think, did I do something wrong?
It's so true. I mean, I come from a medical family, and so nothing was taboo in our household, you know. And I found that really weird when I came here, that's how much of our body and emotions becomes taboo, you know, not
I don't know if
about
it's
it.
quite a British thing not to talk about bodies.
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? It's,
Not sure.
I mean, but you know, like when my wife and I lost a baby, the day after we announced it, like 12 weeks and 3 days. You know?
Yeah.
But we were great because we had a great support system around us as well. But also, it was just there was an acceptance. It does happen. We were, you know, I was
It's
when I
sad,
spoke to my medical family, I was
but
like,
not-
okay,
yeah.
yeah, we know that the body knows what it's doing, and that it there's different reasons, and you've got to sort of. But I think there are these things. Like I think, I mean, like abortion, I think is an interesting. You know, it's become so polarized as an
know.
issue, but actually there are all these people.
And
You know,
if it was okay to express the mixed emotions
Yeah.
one can have about an
Yeah.
abortion, you can have done it and not regret it and feel sad.
I'm sad, yeah. And
Whereas
be
the
okay.
polarization means you either have to be for it or against it. It's
Yeah.
either good or bad. And
Yeah.
again, in counselling, people will come talking about a baby that died, whether it's through abortion or whether it was a miscarriage, and this can be 20 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they just need to
Yeah.
tell us the name of the kid and
Yeah.
tell us
My
how old they would have been.
My wife's a hairdresser, and she gets this space with people, you know, and she just says, "I
So
wish."
you're both?
As like we're both counselling,
Yeah.
but we realised that that's what these safe spaces and third spaces were, because in the old days there were these people knew secrets, and those secrets allowed you to process different things. It wasn't suddenly we've invented the world today, you know, and we've sort of baby in bathwater. We've thrown out a lot of goodness.
Yeah.
That used to, like, we didn't need counselors before, because
No.
I mean I remember I did a counselling course myself, and just talked about like death. You know, people bury their parents or spouses and go back to work by the afternoon. You know, before we wore black for 40 days, and people
There was a
fed
visible
us. And
sign, yes.
There was this cultural, this knownness that
And in
family
many
is grieving.
religions, there is a ceremony to
Yeah,
do
ceremony,
on the
yeah.
year anniversary, the
Yeah.
month anniversary, and whereas here it just seems they're buried and that's it.
Yeah,
And you're
it's
supposed
so
to
sudden.
get over it, rather than, of course, you mourn them, and you just learn to
It's
live
weird
with
though.
it.
As when I worked, I remember just thinking about employee. I used to write in my diary dates of people who worked under me who had lost people, because I thought it was
Oh, that's
important
lovely.
to come, and you know, it's not. I'm trying to big myself, but
No,
for me it was
but
just it's this empathetic space that you create to allow people to recognize that they're seen. You know, one of the biggest.
And that you, as their employer, you see the whole person and you're interested in.
That
Yeah.
they're going through some point in the and that's what we find that we love that in this cafe as well, because we can remember people's anniversaries and birthdays and whatever, and even and one of our big themes is we talk about within the staff is affirmation. You know, this ability to just say, I see you. You know, I see you. Whatever that thing, you know, someone has done, the fact that someone else has seen it and then they acknowledge that is such an important part of who we are.
Well, we all need to be seen. If you think of a baby,
Yeah.
the adult, whether it's the parent, the grandmother, we just look at that baby and they just look straight back.
Yeah. They look at the eye first.
Yeah. Whereas if the baby's like the ones in the Romanian orphanages, but also here, if it's a mother with postnatal depression and a father who can't for whatever reason, if the baby's not seen, then that it's a deep human need, and we need to get that later on in life if we don't get it.
This is great. I mean, I'm loving this because, and that's one of the reasons we're doing this podcast, because I think people need to understand that they're not alone, and there are these spaces that, you know, that we can engage with and get in touch. Grief is another one. I don't want this all to be, you know, down. But the whole point is, it's not gloomy. You know, we
It's part of
can approach.
life.
It's life.
And
It's,
they're intertwined. You can't
Yeah.
have the light without the darkness, and the joy without the sorrow, and the hope without the despair. So people die, and I told you, I just heard today that a good friend has died. And I'm really sad, but it's also making me stop and be grateful that he was in my life. and to appreciate that other friends, anybody could die tomorrow, so, let me make the most of my life and go and phone, my mother-in-law, or whoever, who I might just keep putting off that phone call.
Yeah.
And that's what Death Cafe does. It says the point of Death Cafe is to make the most of our life, because we know it's finite.
Yeah.
If we thought it went on forever, then
it's I'm glad. Thank you, and thank you for doing this this day. Even with this person, losing this person, and what is it that people, what's a healthy way of dealing with these things? Loss, grief.
There are tasks of grieving. A healthy way is to feel the sadness, so to acknowledge the sadness and to feel it. Now, some people can't allow themselves to do that at the beginning. Well, I couldn't. I got the message. I made the mistake of looking at my emails in the middle of the working morning. So for the morning, I just compartmentalized and I got on with coping. But I knew that at some point I had to let myself feel that sadness. So I was lucky I could do it early afternoon. For some people. So acknowledge this pain or the sadness or the loss and feel it. And for that, we need some support or some experience of feeling sadness. Or whether it's friends or chocolate or whatever it takes. I used both this afternoon. Acknowledge the sadness, feel it, and then to eventually to find ways of living with the loss. So it's not a get over it or a move on or go back to normal. It's how do I live with this loss as part? I think of us as bearing the like the nice wrinkles, well, I think they're nice, that show we've lived. Or, I remember this scar from when I was 5 and bumped in there. And it's like, or trees that have to grow around an obstacle. It's like that we find a new meaning in life, particularly if, say, it was a partner or somebody very close or a parent. It's like we have to find a new meaning in life because they were central to the meaning of our lives.
And I think the beauty there is also that you've only lost a part of it because the other part is still with you.
Yeah, your memory of them, the influence they had on you, they live on.
And I realize, like part of the conversations we've had with people who are dealing with loss, like something like divorce, for example, it's so painful and ugly, and all the memory hangs around that ugliness, maybe, that phase of badness. But actually, there's also a goodness before it, or something that was there before that still can be retained in people's lives, and it's just sort of giving people permission almost sometimes to say it's okay, that it's.
Yeah, and I think that it's okay to feel whatever you feel, even if you feel nothing. So it could be bereavement or anything else, but if you feel numb and you feel nothing while everyone else is wailing, and then you think, oh, should I be upset and I'm not, that it's okay to feel nothing, to feel angry, to feel sad, to feel scared. And you will probably dot around all those feelings, or to feel relieved. Thank goodness they didn't suffer anymore, or I don't have to work out care for them. So I think that acceptance of whatever you feel, that feelings are just feelings. They are not good or bad feelings. They are just information that is telling us something. So if I'm angry, then maybe there's something I need to change. There's an injustice or something I don't like. If I'm scared, I need support.
Yeah.
Figure it out.
Another issue I come across, we've come across with customers, is addiction, alcohol in particular, more than anything. Scotland loves its alcohol. It's cultural. It's accepted.
Yes.
And it's the issues I've had to deal with my staff, and I suppose because it's so accepted culturally as well. We used to quite commonly find like wine bottles in our sanitary bins. It's that sort of functional alcoholic was coming in.
They're
and
coming
hiding,
to meet someone. They're nervous, so
and they're hiding the alcohol. Sort of thing. So we know it's there, and no one's talking about this stuff.
Yes.
And families. People. So how do people? What is the stages of it? How do people approach?
It?
Yeah. Why?
Well, it blots out the pain, the pain that is unbearable. Do you remember, like, the trauma we talked about? So any addiction, I think, particularly alcohol, I'm more sure about alcohol, but I think gambling, porn, whatever, drugs. It blocks out the unbearable pain. So when we approach it in counselling, we try and provide a space where that pain can be witnessed and seen and borne in the company of someone else. So that when you feel that, the pain, say bereavement, it could be the loneliness, or it could be any of the traumas we talked about. And alcohol takes the edge off it, or makes people function. That's why we turn to these escape things.
Yeah.
Drugs also, you can forget the pain for a bit.
Oh, sugar and caffeine is what I deal with,
Yeah, those are mine. And so experimenting with managing without them, but it needs support and commitment. I think Alcoholics Anonymous are very good, appealing to our higher power, admitting that we can't do this on our own, that we need other people to accompany us. There's a lot of wisdom in there, and that it's an ongoing journey. So, not surprising there's a lot of addiction. And if there was less stigma about that, we could talk about it.
That's why I want to bring it up. It's we can keep it light, etc. But it's these are things we're coming across.
Well, they ruin people's lives because you lose your money, you lose your relation. It's very hard to live with someone with an addiction.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you have to get away from them for your own sanity, and you feel guilty about it. And that's why there's Al-Anon for the relatives of the person with the problem. And people will deny the problem.
Yeah.
Until you write down how much you are drinking or how much chocolate I'm eating. Well, maybe that's because it's the drug that makes the brain want more of it.
Yeah. And it is. Yeah. Okay. So then again, it's coming back to that rewiring the brain to something healthier or something.
Finding another way to cope. It's a coping strategy, whether it's coping with anxiety or loss or pain.
Okay.
And if we can find other ways to cope, that can replace it. So a simplistic attitude to addiction curing, which is just reduce your alcohol or stop buying it. That's good on one level, but you're not addressing the underlying need, and you probably turn to another addiction. People give up smoking and take up eating. Classic.
Yeah. As in we're all addicts. So it's just looking at healthy addictions, like maybe running and.
I don't know, but when that becomes an addiction,
I suppose that can become balance.
I think we all have our addictions, and it's just good to be aware of them. But they're on a sliding scale, and it can so easily, without you realizing, turn into a life-limiting one.
Yeah. What are the sort of disciplines you carry? Now because you're aware through your sort of profession of what the issues are. You yourself are dealing with issues that you go through, etc., and then you're trying to help others as well. What do you find are healthy practices?
Well, I'm a routine person, so some people won't be, but for me, routine helps. If I got up every morning and thought, do I feel like exercising? Do I feel like going to work? I probably wouldn't. So it's very good for me to have a routine. So COVID's been a bit of a challenge on that. So my morning routine, it will sound very cliched, is, get up, do a bit of yoga, meditate, pray. All these things are good for me. Yeah. I cannot honestly say I want to do them. If I said, do I feel like yoga and prayer this morning? Of course I don't. I feel like staying in bed. But I know that they keep me centered and grounded. And then evening routine, pretty similar ingredients. Try to read every day. They're just things. There's nothing exciting, I'm afraid. There's no magic bullet.
But then that's why I think it's like sometimes we think it's overly complicated, but it isn't. It's just
it's not complicated, but it's very difficult. Like I've been trying to do these things every morning for decades, and I'm still working on it.
How did you deal with COVID then?
Well, I was lucky that we had enough space at home to each have a room, and that our children were no longer young. So I honestly take my hat off to anyone in a small living space with primary school age children, because I don't know how I would have managed. So for me, as I say, it was relatively easy. The children are older, we have space. My main worry was the business. Would we go under? I wanted to keep paying our staff. I wanted to keep, because being a good employer is very important to me, providing employment. So that was, and Andy, my husband, because he'd had the liver transplant, got that letter that all the extremely vulnerable people got, going, don't move out the house, house and garden, that's it.
You're locked.
So that was a concern too. So what was your question, how I managed it? I guess a day at a time. juggling issues.
But
yeah.
that change, that quickness of change.
It was very
you
sudden.
know,
We had a
like
group of students due to come, sorry, for counselling skills, and suddenly we had to move them online. Sorry.
Yeah.
So how did it happen
Yeah,
for you?
like, yeah. How did you compartmentalize it, or did you? What did you do with it? That suddenly this world changing rapidly around you.
I changed rapidly.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's what I do. Other businesses shut
Yeah.
until they regrouped, and we just went, no, we're moving online. I will train all my counsellors.
What
with
did
all
you
the
do for your
students."
staff?
Well, we reassured them that we would pay them and that we had funds to pay them for at least 3 months.
Okay. Yeah.
I felt that was probably one of the most important things they needed to know.
Emotionally.
Emotionally, we listened to them.
Yeah.
You know, just one-to-one chats.
Okay.
How's it going for them? We had regular coffee
Did you
breaks.
just check in with them?
Yep.
Yeah.
And then we had group coffee breaks online. We delivered equipment for them. We asked them what they needed. And they did for us. I mean, it was mutual.
Mhm.
I think we were very lucky that our latest new staff member had started in September, so at least we already had a good few months
Yeah.
of trust and relationship built up. It would have been harder if somebody had only just started and we didn't have that relationship yet.
One of the issues that I'm sort of coming across now is, COVID I think was a gift to us in its own way, because it's one of the most unique events that happened that we all experienced.
Yeah.
Like, even wars and the last recession, whatever, it's slightly abstract. We don't, some of us extreme.
If the war is out there rather than in our own country, then it's,
and suddenly there was this thing
yeah.
that just affected us all. And but what sort of lament I have right now is we seem to be just ignoring it and just going back, trying to get back to normal, whatever that normal idea is, without processing this trauma. And I don't mean trauma in a negative sense. I just mean it as in, here is a completely unusual event
Yeah.
that we all went through. And collectively, we seem to be focusing on, what's a new norm going to come in, our finances, our work, what's our new, and that's fine. I would expect that. But I think we've almost like missed an opportunity.
Well,
Put
maybe
in our
I'm more
schools.
optimistic. I think it is an opportunity and we will process it.
Do you think
but
so? Yeah, okay.
I think it's Maslow's hierarchy of needs. We need to know that we will be fed and watered and have money. We
Okay.
need all those things
And
in
Wi-Fi
place.
now, we add that to the
Oh, we
bottom.
do, don't we, at the bottom? Before we are perhaps able to process the more
Okay.
spiritual, existential questions of what's important in my life. So I think it's not surprising. Like at the beginning of lockdown, we attended to the practical things.
Yeah.
Have I got enough toilet roll?
Toilet roll.
Yes.
What was that? Why did we? What was the toilet roll?
About.
Because it was universal in the Western world, almost. I think, and that the toilet, that was our go-to.
Yeah.
What did it say about us?
I don't know. I can only think there's some link that people went, oh, illness,
Yeah.
bodies.
Yeah. Fluid.
I'm
lube.
not aware there was a run on sanitary products.
No.
It could have been the
No.
same thing, menstrual products or toothpaste, as
No.
far as I know.
No.
Something about, I don't know. We had just ordered an enormous bulk from What the Crap.
yeah.
Do you know that What the Crap
Yeah.
are this fantastic Australian
Australian
company?
company, yeah.
Doing toilet paper that's recycled. So we had lots. I started taking it to people as presents. So again, it's going back to that fundamental need, or what do we need? And for some
Yeah.
reason, we fixated on toilet
But there was
paper.
that whole, the Maslow's needs, you can understand that, but it was like
Yeah.
toilet paper.
Yeah.
Something was revealed there,
Yeah, and I don't know
We'll
what
have to come
yet.
back to it.
Maybe
so,
people can
so
come
what would
back.
you advise people to do, as employers get back to normal, or whatever, as they start opening up now?
Trying
gyms,
to
whatever.
avoid the back to normal. The new normal,
Yeah.
at least, is something. For employers, well, we've been doing workshops for teams
Okay.
and businesses going back. So what we recommend is get the team together, whether it's online or in person, and we do a workshop on let's acknowledge what we've been through together and separately. So get people to share what was good about lockdown and what was not good. What were the gains and what were the losses, individually and for the business. Because there will have been gains and losses for everybody.
Yeah.
And it's good to acknowledge those. And again, we're trying to get away from polarization of it was good or it was bad. No. What was
Yeah,
good, what was
what was
bad?
good.
Let's share that individually and collectively as a business. Then, once you've done that, and I think only once you've acknowledged the past and what is, can we then plan the future? If we're too scared to look at the past or we don't realize it's important,
Yeah.
it will bug us and it will rear its head and restrain us. So after we'd done that workshop on acknowledging what was hard, what was good, what
Yeah.
wasn't, and that's important because it lets everyone have their own experience instead of pretending we all had the same,
Yes.
all good, all bad.
Yeah.
And that's really good for a team, to be able to hear and tolerate difference without feeling compelled to
And you
make
only
agree with
discover
me.
the similarities or differences by doing that, you know? Like, you're like, oh, I did the same, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Or I didn't know you
I did.
gardened,
Yeah.
you know, or that you had an elderly mother in Inverness, or
Yeah,
whatever
yeah.
it is, or, oh, I like playing music. So we acknowledge the past, and then we turn to the future and say, okay, as a group, as a business, what do you want to restore from before COVID? Like at Rowan, we want to restore face-to-face sessions. What do you want to retain from lockdown? What were the good things? Like, hey, we managed online counselling. We want to
Yeah.
retain that. We're not going to go back to normal and ditch it. So
Mm.
what do you want to keep? What do you want to restore from before? What do you want to retain? And what do we want to reinvent
Nice.
and create and do differently? And that might fit what you were saying about let's not lose the learning.
Yeah.
And those three, I think, come from emergency recovery people. It's not us. What do you want to restore, retain, reinvent? And to think about that as a group.
Yeah.
Start the conversation.
I'm glad you said that, because to me that's just because we almost have lost the muscle memory of processing some of our emotions, and you know we've become functional, almost industrial people, you know, and I think these are some of these memory spaces that we need to almost re-examine and regenerate and re-knit into into the new, whatever that new is. To recognize, you know, these things happened, and to all of us.
And also, it can help to remember how resilient we are as individuals and an organisation. So let's take Rowan as an example. We can remember how we survived the recession of 2008, or we had a big downturn in 2014. Individuals can remember how they've survived relationship breakups, cancer. You know, just to remember we have survived adversity before. Okay, it wasn't this adversity,
But we've done it, yeah.
and we've grown because of it. And what did we learn from that?
Yeah.
I wonder what we'll learn from this.
Yeah. Wow.
But we can only engage in that conversation if we're not worried about how am I going to feed my kid tonight, or where am I going to sleep tonight.
It's a luxury of a level of privilege.
So we need to put those things in place.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's been. I mean, my family still run a medical charity in India, working with leprosy and eye work, and COVID is a very different journey for people out there, and you know, it wasn't lockdown and furlough. It was you know, food and a whole lot of politics and stuff going on. So. You know, to be grateful, I suppose, as well, in that we live in this place, and
I think we forget that. We're always why me, poor me. There it's the glass half full, glass half empty. Yeah.
No, good. No. Rachel, this has been lovely. I mean, I could carry on talking. This is the sort of space and conversations that I love, and I think we don't do enough of it, you know. And I'd love to have you back on the show at some point. You know, we talked something specific. We didn't even get onto AI and how you use that in your day to day. You know.
I just want to mention the Menopause Festival.
Sorry, go on. Yeah.
Okay, because that's next year, April the 30th, May the 1st, 2021. And it's unique to Perth. You mentioned oxymorons before. The two words menopause and festival, when I Googled them in 2017, nothing came up, because those menopause and festival don't go together. Perth now has the world's only menopause festival, two-day festival of comedy, cabaret, talks from doctors, creative workshops, you know, poetry, dance, whatever, and an afternoon seminar on menopause in the workplace for businesses to look at this thing that happens to half the population, affects the other half who live and work with us, but is not spoken about, apart from the odd joke about hot flushes. All the other symptoms hardly ever get mentioned. So that's
exciting.
We're really hoping that can happen. We had to cancel 2020 and move forward. #FlushFest.
#FlushFest.
Look it up.
FlushFest. That's
You'll
great.
remember that one. We will stick a poster in the Blend window.
Absolutely.
As soon as it's up and running again.
How do people get in touch with you? Or where can they get in touch
Okay, I'll
with
give
you?
3 websites.
Oh, okay.
Depends which of my
3.
hats they want. So for Menopause Cafe, it's www.menopausecafe.net. Maybe we can put these on the
Yeah,
podcast
I'll put
bit.
this on the podcast notes.
And there are menopause cafes worldwide, US, Kenya, Australia, wherever. Death Cafe also worldwide, deathcafe.com, DEATH,
Yeah.
because I have a lisp. It's not about not being able to hear. And Rowan Consultancy, we have counsellors from London to Inverness, coaches, we come and do workshops for businesses, mediation, critical incident debriefing. That's rowan-consultancy.co.uk. Or go on social media, we're on, all of those are on, certainly YouTube and Twitter and some on Instagram.
Fab. This is great, and hopefully we'll chat again soon.
That would be good.
Really appreciate you coming and sharing this with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. If you've enjoyed this chat and would like to maybe join us, or you know someone who's got an interesting story to share, get in touch. podcast@blendcoffee.co.uk. Well, traveller, till next time.
Cheerio.